Nate Wyan, and this is my digital bilanguage and generational differences slideshow. All right, so people I interviewed were my dad, Nate Wyan Sr. He's a Generation X. He's an executive director, and he's for senior living hospitality, and they're called Carencia down in Austin, Texas. And then I also interviewed Man Mertlin. She's a Generation Z. She's a worker at an ice cream shop called Josh and John's. All right, for Nate Senior, I use an Outlook email primarily because it's a more formal means of communication. It creates a message archive that can be used for future references. There's also a need to maintain a record of communication for legal and business purposes. And then his official difficult message rule is no more than two paragraphs in an email. If you are starting your third paragraph in the email, you need to communicate in another way, such as in person or over the phone. Just kind of keeping it short and concise. And if you have something longer to say, you need to have more of a face-to-face contact with that person. Then we have Madden Merlin. Her official thoughts is I use messages mainly because my boss and coworkers use messages to communicate individually with us. I also use Slack because it's easier to communicate with everyone at once. So yeah, she uses more direct messages with her boss if the boss is tell her something or she has to tell her coworker about something, and then if they need to tell someone everything, they use Slack, and it's an easier way to communicate with her. And then her difficult message rule is never focus on only your side of the perspective of the situation, but also look at the other side and have more empathy for both sides of the conversation. So there's more empathy when you're having messages like that. So Nate Wine, his do's, don'ts, and nevers is always address email to the person and never use profanity, and always do a spell check before sending. Those are just kind of like check over those things and don't use them. Like do check over them. And then email don'ts is don't reply to all if only one person needs a reply. So yeah, just press reply all. You really want to focus on make sure you don't send something confidential to them to everybody. Don't use emoji or slang. It's just going to keep it more professional and keep it more like straightforward. And then don't say anything confidential in case one person needs a reply. That's kind of what I said in the first one. It's just like you want if you have anything confidential to say to somebody, you don't want to send it to everybody, or they can send it to somebody else. And the email nevers is like use sarcasm or angry tone. You want to be very professional and never reply all when you are blind copied. And blind copy is just when no one knows you've seen the email. So when you reply all, they kind of outs the person that sent the email that you actually know about it. And then never reply to the wrong email. That's kind of straightforward. All right, Madden's do, don'ts, and nevers. Message do's is to maintain professional and straightforward messages. Just keep very professional. You're talking to your boss or your coworkers, and make sure to have formal opening and closing. So yeah, just have your name at the beginning, like hey, so and so, thank you so much, Matt. Message don'ts is have casual language, especially when you're talking to your boss. You want to be professional. You want to make sure you get to the point, have clarity in your conversation, and then don't use profanity. Of course, it's just there's no point. You're trying to talk professionally. Your boss, you don't use profanity. And her message nevers is don't have an attitude in your messages. It's just kind of like going back to her thing about having empathy. You don't really want to have an attitude with somebody. All right. And then the two differences in the opinion I've seen between the two generations was that Nate Wyan, he's part of the Generation X. He prefers to use email to communicate in the workplace. And that was more due to like having a more formal approach to it, and then also having the ability to have it archived and we can look back on it. And then Madden's was in Generation Z preferred more messages in Slack because it allowed her to have more of like it'd be like because a quick and real time communication between the two because it's like real quick back and forth. And then difference two would be Nate Wine and the Generation X. He believed that difficult messages over email should be brief and professional, as if it needs to be longer, it needs to be more of a face to face communication style, like I said before. This is because his goal is more towards having clarity, professionalism, and his task focused communication. So if he needs to talk to somebody, he wants to be more professional and face to face. Whereas Madden and Generation Z focuses more on emotional tone in her messages and stressing more on empathy in her writing messages. And this is more because she could emphasize more emotional intelligence and mutual understanding, even when she's talking to somebody in a professional setting. I feel like those are really two different things, and it really shows the difference between Generation X and Generation Z. Well, thank you so much, and see you at some point.